Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief. Woohoo! It's Friday, TGIF. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na, Friday. Now that's interesting. I show a blue head on YouTube. Am I screen sharing, guys? Am I looking at the right page here?
Maybe we're having YouTube issues again.
Oh, Jesus. Never a dull moment. Let's see how I can do this. If I go screen share, there's my little blue head. Maybe I'm logged in under the wrong person. But if I go screen share,
that shouldn't matter, actually.
Let me free up a seat. I'm gonna watch back the recording anyway. All right. Well, sounds popped. So, hey, there we are. We're screen sharing now. Yay! Hi, everybody. A little bit of a curveball to start your day. Let's see if I pop on over onto this chart. Let's see if YouTube updates. Kind of an odd beginning. Tony C says, working. All right. Well, that's good. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so good morning, everybody. It's Friday, and actually we have a really special treat for everybody today, so I'm super excited about this presentation. And I really do like that because, you can kind of get a little bit, sort of redundant looking at the same charts and hunting M's and W's and stuff. And so this is a little bit of a refresher today. We're going to take a look at a little bit of the sort of fundamental back end of the crypto space. So super excited for what we've got planned today. So we probably should do like introductions to start this off just to make sure everybody's on board. So we've got the mayor of Vienna driving the bus this morning. How you doing this morning, Alex?
Hey, sir. Can't complain. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. So good. Everybody knows we're in good hands. Hopefully screen shares will all work appropriately. Somebody who actually knows what they're doing on the back end here. So that's great to see. Makes me feel super confident that we'll rock this thing. And our special presentation today, we've got sort of a tag team working. In that we've got Sen, our original gangster, TRI, and he's such a gangster in his orange sweatshirt. Coming from downtown, well, I guess you're not in downtown Amsterdam, but coming from the Netherlands. How you doing this morning, Sen?
I'm doing great, thank you. But I mean, the Netherlands is only Amsterdam, right? So there's nothing around it.
Well, I know when I announce Fjord, I can say Breda, but I can't remember the name. Is there actually a little city that you live in?
Yeah, it has a name. It's called Enschede, so that's going to be one hell for you to pronounce.
I can already feel that.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Still going. Anyway, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
We will just say you're reporting in from downtown Netherlands.
Right.
And really, where you are is the heart of the Netherlands, right? I mean, let's call a spade a spade.
Right? No, it's
I'm just playing. It's supposed to go, yeah, represent.
Yeah, this is where it's all at. Yeah,
that's right. And,
New Amsterdam here, right?
Fjord's just out on some satellite out there in Breda. That's just the sticks, right? Anyway, only people from Netherlands watching this video are going to be able to understand what we're talking about. But anyway, it sounds like Fjord's rocking it here, and his partner in crime this morning, which I think is kind of cool. We've got Colin here. How you doing this morning, Colin?
I'm doing well, Brian. Thank you for having me on today. Coming straight out of Graham's level 1 program and halfway through, I think, about the level 2. I'm just looking forward to supporting San on this adventure here into the developmental side, which is not my cup of tea, but I am sort of an FA kind of guy, so thought I could help out a bit.
Okay, well, we'll see what you guys have in store for us. We're all waiting with bated breath. So what should we do first, Alex? Should we do just a quick overview? Kind of had my head on backwards here this morning, so I'm a little bit flying blind.
Sure.
What do you think we should do? In fact, shut up, Brian. Alex, what do you think we should do first?
Well, I think we should start with the usual, maybe broader market look,
okay,
and then head over to crypto, and then leave it up to the guys to give us a nice presentation.
All right, sounds good. Dino, do we have roughly, San and Colin, do we have a rough sort of idea how long your presentation is so I can sort of put myself on a stopwatch here?
I'm thinking about 20 minutes. I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be longer than that. I think 15, 20.
Yeah. It's
Okay,
not.
so Alex, if you could just bug me at the bottom half of the hour, and then I'll try and see if I can segue into the second half of the hour being for you guys. Okay. So once upon a time in stock market land, of course, today is the big options expiry, March options. We spent lots of time talking about the implications of strike prices, and gee whiz, what a coincidence. You can see they got the stock market right up at the top end of its range. They weren't able to go after the 290s, but who knows? I mean, geez, by the end of the day, maybe they can rally the Dow up 100 or so and get this thing up above 290. It wouldn't shock me. Probably the one market, broader market sort of conversation that caught my attention, which I was a little surprised at this morning, was the outperformance of the SOX index. It looked to me like they were taking the SOX index right up into resistance here and painting an inside bar. And I even said in the lounge yesterday, I was like, holy crap. If this actually does roll over and we tick through these lows this morning, that actually becomes a pretty powerful sell signal. But you can see they gapped the market higher right on the open this morning, right above that trend line. And that trend line actually, it's interesting to see how it played last tags. And keep in mind, this is a trend line that was drawn off of these peaks up top here. This might actually turn into a situation where what once was resistance now actually becomes support. And it'd be interesting to see how Alex's hyperwave stocks are doing and whether they're crapping out. Maybe I'll load that up for the Broiler Chicken show, but I don't really talk too much stock market with them. But maybe, Monday when Thomas is on, we'll take a real good look at this. But the long and short of it here is this M that was put in place here seems to have been broken now through that options expiry. And if you were short inclined, well, you just got to take your licks and hop off on the sidelines and wait for the next structure signal to come in. As you can see also, too, I was having a lot of fun with Celestial events. I just did the GAN Level 2 automated program videos. Super immersed in EVUs and all those kind of fun planetary relationships. So it was really interesting how that actually was an EVU 90, which is a 90-degree angle of Earth, Venus, and Uranus. Market did break on that, but then we've quickly snapped back. Now, does this actually play into the March options expiry and then we actually M out and have to play catch up? I've seen that happen before. And if we look at things like the Dow, interestingly enough, the S&P 500, we're still playing with that EVU level. I thought I had on the Dow here, but I'm not quite sure. No, looks like I thought I did it off. Yeah, here we go. So interesting how the Dow right now is basically at that EVU level. But I don't know whether you guys noticed, but something very significant happened. And I've seen this happen many, many, many times in the past. When we get these sort of build up apex in the market, I've seen it's absolutely remarkable how it happens. You get these sort of planetary alignments, and it was quite remarkable, actually. Let's see if I can show you that picture. I was posting them in the lounge last night, but we actually had a pretty big celestial event just happen in the cosmos, in our solar system. I don't know which is the best image to show you guys. I think this one is. Nope, I stand corrected. I think this one is. Yeah, there we go. So we actually had, very interestingly enough, Jupiter, Venus, and Mars all create basically a straight line relationship, and then Mercury and Earth almost absolutely perfect cardinal cross, and the Moon was a 90-degree angle to that. So something celestially very significant happened. And I don't know whether you guys noticed or saw, but some guy went absolutely crazy in New Zealand yesterday. You know, interestingly enough, it was an Australian national who did it, but I think the word is he basically went into a mosque and murdered about, I think, like a dozen or a couple dozen people. Just staggering. But we often see this happen around these events. 49, is that how what the toll is? Jesus Christ. Oh man, this crazy world, eh? I don't know whether you guys remember, but there was a really interesting EVU event, celestial bodies, everything all lining up, and there was a British politician who was murdered in public sight a few years ago. I see this happen a lot. So interestingly enough, and this is kind of the shitty part about this, is that it's almost like, you know, the whole world is building into some sort of apex. The whole human experience is building into some sort of apex event. And then it's bizarre, but in essence, this event in New Zealand now is going to take people's attention away from the stock market. And people are not going to be interested in, you know, like, you know, whether companies are hitting their earnings. We're going to be all wrapped up in this New Zealand story for the next little while. So in a weird sort of way, I think that might actually, you know, you hate to say it, but, you know, I think that might actually take the attention away from the stock market and basically let these guys, you know, run the market wherever they want to. Their people's attention is not focused on stocks right now. So, you know, we do have this big options expiry event. We had sort of said that if they can take the market up into this area, by the end of today, they hit an absolute knock the cover off the ball home run, but really any expiry above this area, and they're very, very happy. So as you can see, the stock market's basically on its highs. I really wouldn't be surprised if we actually see the stock market close out today very, very strong, so that all those options expire basically worthless. I don't really see, you know, actually, this is a really good commentary. Remember, we saw the other day, and actually, I think this was the end of last week, the Dow Jones, I think this was Monday, wasn't it? The 11th of March. Yeah, Monday. Remember we talked about this. This was actually a key reversal. We even were commenting as could the Dow actually close above this point here? And if it is a key reversal, interestingly enough, Tuesday, actually the signal fired even though it was a down day. And you can see the stock market is now just marching its way higher here. So really, really good example. Where's my guinea pig? Colleen, where are you, Colleen? Can you see the upside bullish engulfing bar? And because it engulfed the two previous bars, this is a key reversal. Hey, if you're going to learn one thing out of this course, man, learn these key reversals. They're extremely powerful. You know, and really we could actually even, for that matter, start to project upside levels. So if we just do a very simple study like so, and then clone that, we really should expect just an equal distance off after the breakout. So interestingly enough, they're going to take this market right up into that original top. And then, as I had said before, and, you know, it's interesting how, you know, a lot of sort of older market participants like to follow the Dow very closely. And there is that EVU event. So we know that there was a big celestial event that happened here. Maybe the market got a little bit too far too fast. Outside upside key reversal, take us right back up to the top end of the range. Wicks and tails like to be eaten. And my hunch is there's probably a lot of guys who'd love to hit this market right against those levels right up there. So I'd be watching for that event over the next little while. I suppose also too, guys like Thomas, and there are a lot of professionals that trade just like Thomas using clothesline levels. They're going to start getting really interested in shorting up in this window here. So you can see how the market's just marching up into that level. So, on balance, looks like the stock market wants to head higher. And now that the sort of attention is off of the stock market, I think they can. I don't know whether China and the Americans have made peace. Looks like this is going to go through a period of consolidation. And if we're lucky, maybe it sets up nice bot setups here to paint a trade up top. But if that kind of scenario does play out, then really I'm thinking 87 scenario. You can see how the bond market broke here in March. There's the 87. It broke the end of March. Really these old highs are now just a hop, skip, and a jump away. And we could very easily see a melt up scenario if these guys actually make peace. Interest rates are looking relatively calm, so I don't really see anything to get too excited about there. If we actually look at bond prices themselves, quite a few of them are still very much in uptrends. And now you can actually see this short-term interest rate market. Remember we said we have to watch this short-term corporate interest rate market, but the short-term corporate interest rate market is flashing a bull signal here, suggesting, and we've sort of been talking about this recently, we have to keep an eye on this TED spread relationship. There's smatterings that maybe this is starting to roll over in the short term. But for the time being, TED spread's still pretty quiet, still well behaved. The Fed in the United States is on hold, and I don't see any reason for that to change right away. We're going to have to start seeing these euro dollars really crap out here to generate that signal. But as we said just a moment ago, we're actually getting bullish signals off of the trending signals off of things like the weekly charts here. So that's not exactly a bearish scenario. And you see how the market acted when these weekly signals came in off of the big bonds and the longer dated maturities. The market had some legs on the other side of that. So, and then also too, if the world goes into a period of mourning and shock over this event in New Zealand, and everybody just sort of takes a big pause, I could easily see that the attention is going to be pulled away from interest rates. A little bit pissed off to see that gasoline prices are basically doing exactly what they're supposed to do through the seasonal window. Jerks. Buy your unleaded the middle of February, sell at the middle of May. You made money 9 out of the best 10 years, right? So, well, there it is. You can see that seasonal rally is playing as usual. And of course, Mr. Tesla's making fun of me for driving a 19th century car. We won't go into that today. Palladium still looking incredibly strong. I think Russians are very happy. Interesting to see zinc, beautiful weekly double bottom, nice bullish turn signal, maybe a little choppy, could see some backfilling. But on balance, now we got zinc, we got copper trending higher. The gold was the first market that turned up here. It hasn't broken, and the moving averages are still very far apart, so we could see some backfilling here. Silver back down into the moving averages, but you can see we're now coming into places where people who didn't play this original double bottom breakout might actually think about buying. And that was a new high up there, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's some backfilling here. And as we said, probably the most important market here, the professor of economics, is actually trying to put in a little bit of a W here. And the weekly trend signal has turned back up. So let's keep an eye. Basically, this is a really good proxy on how the economy is doing. We could start thinking about bullish bots. We got one low. I think this low is actually lower than that low. So, if this thing does gain traction and we are actually back in bull, well, that's pointing actually up here. And again, that might be sort of that melt up scenario that we see the Americans and the Chinese make peace. And all of a sudden you could see just a monster rally in the stock market. Those people that are interested in Canada, and I'm going to be doing this, let's take maybe a good look at the forestry stocks, Canfor, West Mill, I think it is. I can't remember. West, in Vancouver, on the island, there's a big lumber company I used to trade, West Fraser. So I'm going to be taking a real good look at the lumber names here, because that's a pretty good looking weekly turn there. Just an FYI for you guys. Grain markets, I was super bullish of soy oil. Markets like wheat just got their asses handed to them. But I noticed that we're actually getting a bullish cross here on the hogs market. So that's livestock. So that's implying that there's probably going to be more softness in the grain market. Things like corn and wheat. Corn actually, I guess, is broken down here. And the commitments of traders reports is startling on this corn. And the wheat and stuff, they're going heavily short. The commercials are going heavily long. So I'm actually thinking uppy now on the meats, but we'll see how that goes. And last but not least, oh my God, it's a fucking miracle. We actually have a big crypto market that's actually trying to turn back up. It's a miracle. The interesting thing, of course, is that we've been talking about this at length, so it really shouldn't surprise anybody. But Litecoin led the sort of bottoming process the last cycle through its halvening event. And of course, through that halvening event window rally, really, there was a Ponzi in China where they basically Litecoin was sitting at, maybe about, I think it was $1, $1.50 or something. I don't know whether I have it on here. I probably should. Yeah, here it is. So we were down here at, maybe that's not it. No, yeah, here it is. This is it here. So, actually, this is a pretty similar, right? So the actual trend turn for 2015 came in actually in June. So, but hopefully you guys can see the similarities, right? Bottom, and really, I think probably our current market, probably that same sort of bottoming. There's the moving average turn. We could see a pretty violent pop here in Litecoin. So there is that sort of 2015 marking the bottom. And then, fast forward to today, and gee whiz, we're getting a lot of sort of similarities. I don't know where this thing wants to go. Ironically enough, and this is where, only after the fact you go, oh, gee whiz, I can't believe how cliche this was. But if I was a bear and I wanted to actually short Litecoin, believe it or not, there's my reload zone way up there. Call me crazy, but that's it, right? Wicks and tails like to be eaten. There's really juicy wick up there. Might even be a gap right there. Tough to say. Big old wick up there. Juicy wick to be had there. Probably initially, we probably should be thinking things like 38.2s. So that's $155 on Litecoin. And that's basically just playing against this area here. I suppose we could probably also do just a cute little range from where we actually turn bear to where we turn bull. So $85, nice little initial objective. Old support lines. Well, once was resistance becomes support, yada, yada. These are the actual breakdown levels at about $100. So I really wouldn't be surprised if in the not too distant future, you actually see Litecoin up top here. The good part about this is, maybe this is a false start, right? And we actually have to roll over. But the good part about it is, these moving average relationships, when they do turn, they don't usually, roll back over right away. You can see how long this one took to actually go back into bear. You can see this one when it turned up. right? It took a while for it to go back into bear, but there was a nice little rally in the interim. And even that Tron, right? It turned up here, and worst case scenario after it turned up is it just sort of, it backs up against previous support and just goes sideways for a few weeks. So I don't know whether, it was weird, like on Twitter and stuff, people are talking about Bitcoin dumping here and getting ready for another leg lower and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. This doesn't make sense, right? I think actually the sell-off window is over. Actually, on a sort of an aside, I thought it was really interesting that the Chicago Board Options Exchange, which of course we've been very critical of, and I have no fucking clue why they even had Bitcoin futures contracts on an options exchange. Makes no sense whatsoever. But basically, they announced they're getting out of the Bitcoin business, which is good, right? Because basically, these guys had no business being in this Bitcoin futures trading market at all, and I think it was all bullshit. I really do. But so be it. They're blaming it on the fact that there's just not that much interest in volumes, and because the Bitcoin prices come back down to earth. The CME contract, which is supposed to be 5 Bitcoins at like $3,000, $4,000 a Bitcoin. That's, if you figure you have to put like 5% down on margin, like a $20,000 contract, 5,000 down is like $1,000, right? Which is actually pretty normal for futures trading. So, if anything, good riddance, get the fuck out of here. You had no business being in here to begin with. And really, this, in my opinion, something really stunk about all of this the entire time. There was just something not right about it. And I think, unfortunately, it had everything to do with orange toupees. But we won't go there today. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a nice sort of broader market perspective. Just a quick mention on a couple altcoins that have caught my attention. I won't go into stocks too much today, but maybe I'll just make reference to this very quickly. We're going through the reorganization process of a lot of these stocks in the crypto space, which is actually pretty normal. So this Rebonds that I was interested in a while ago. I think they've gone and reorganized their company. I was trading at around $1. Now it's $8.30. And all of my charts didn't make any sense when I loaded them up this morning. So I got a feeling there was a big rollback there. I'll take a look into that. But if the rollback has happened, well, that's a good sign because that's naturally what we kind of thought had to happen. And then also this DPW. I remember at length we talked about how there was just too much stock out. And it was trading, like 10, 15 cents a share, then went down to like, less than 10 cents a share. Now here we are at $1.35. So I think there was a reorganization here as well. Stuart actually mentioned, and, I think we'll have to give a shout out to Bard as well. There is another crypto stock in the Canadian stock market we should keep an eye on called Hash Chain. And, you look at this chart and you go, okay, I could see money to be made here. At 3 cents a share, they got 260 million shares out. Roll the stock back 10 for 1, bring it back to like 20, 30 cents a share. And then Brian can start getting interested. So interesting name, but I think we have to wait for the rollback to come in on this one. And then we'll start getting interested. But I'd put it on KASH. I'd put it on your radar screen as another blockchain-related company that we should keep an eye on. And then the last thing that I'll mention here before I turn the floor over to the boys for the presentation this morning, getting, obviously you can see there's a couple uppy markets here, isn't there? I mean, this is so funny when, like Bitcoin maximalists and stuff like this, and people that hate altcoins and stuff like that. When you see a market like this, I mean, this is the whole reason why I trade the altcoin space is you get these nuts so insane rallies. Might as well take advantage of it. I mean, it's there. So, you know, anecdotally, you should look at these screens and go, yeah, okay, I can understand why Beamish is interested in this stuff. You know, a couple interesting bids we have been filled on. Markets are moving up nicely. This one's actually just basically at the buy level. And then, you know, a couple bids that I did have working on that are running away from me. Oh, this BitTube. Oh, that kills me. I was so close to a fill there. I mean, that's ridiculous how close that is. But, oh well. Live by the sword, die by the sword. So, you know, just get out there and have fun in this market. It's a very uppy market. I mean, this Cardano, I think, is one of the sort of leaders in the space right now. It's sort of from the shitcoin kind of market perspective. And, you know, I got Binance. I had my order on Binance, so no fill for you, Brian. But, you know, I even wrote up all of this, how I would try and trade this bot level here. So clearly there was a nice entry, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 lows. Gee whiz, we can really make an argument. Maybe there's even smaller bots working, and away we go. So hats off to anybody who was able to get into that Cardano. It looks like it's rocking and rolling. And on balance, it looks like it's a very, very uppy market. The last thing that I'll mention, and it's just a shout out to the level 1ers, because this is the stuff that you really need to learn in this program. Colleen, can you see the W's off of this MCO? And then, you know, if you want to make it a little easier on yourself psychologically, you let the W's confirm themselves. All right, this is a bull market. You draw your reload zones, and look how politely this thing came right back down into reload zones and painted a very acceptable, agreeable bottom. You know, like putting bids on breakouts through reload zones at original double bottom levels. That's our bread and butter. I mean, this is absolutely bread and butter. And if you want to wait for another W to come in through here, totally fine. Like Nathaniel yesterday in the lounge, he was saying, you know, I don't just like to blindly buy levels, and that's fine. This is really a function of what works for you. Remember, that's a huge part of technical analysis. So we have to get to the point of what are you comfortable with. And he was kind of like, well, I'd like to wait for W's to come in on this sort of test. And what a great example. I mean, this is just absolutely perfect. Colleen, I would really recommend that you basically print this chart off and just say, you know, this is what I took away from this TRI experience and what Beamish was trying to teach me. It's really just that simple. I think we will leave Brian's sort of contribution at that for today. I mean, we could spend hours just going through all of these charts. And I know there's a whole bunch of markets that are looking really juicy right now. I really want to listen to Sen and Colin's presentation. So what do you think? Was there anything that I missed here, Alex, that I really should have talked about?
No, I think you covered it very well, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So Sen, I heard that you guys actually got together before this daily brief to sort of review your game plan. So I get the impression that you have sort of a set path that you want to follow. So I'll leave the floor open to you. Ooh, look at that. Even fancy slideshow presentations. Man, these guys are pro. So I'm going to put myself on mute. I'm going to get my box of popcorn, and I'm going to enjoy the show. Fire when ready.
Right. So, yeah, you can hear me? Great. I'm not sharing the right screen. Great.
I was just going to say, I think we're on your repo GitHub there.
No, not really, but let me see if I can.
Oh, the notes, my bad.
That's strange. Let me see if I can do this. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Now you can see it, hopefully.
Yep.
Okay.
Electric Capital Quarterly Dev Report.
Presents. Right. Wow. It took a little bit longer. Okay. So there was this nice. I saw this nice Medium post about fundamentals in commits and contributions, GitHub contributors, and I followed the link, so to speak, and I saw the source, and that was really interesting. So I posted in the lounge, and Colin and I decided to do a little presentation about it. So without further ado, for the guys who don't know me, I'm regularly, I guess, on TRI. I've been with TRI for, I think, over 3 years now. I do not share a whole lot of ideas, but that's mainly because I tend to focus on higher time frames. So I don't do any day trading yet. I'm also currently working with Alex on a Kairos, a newer version of Kairos, which hopefully can do a little bit more. And Alex is building the front end, so to speak, and I hopefully will deliver the data for the front end. Anyway, Colin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I joined TRI in September and joined the level 1 program, and have just been following along ever since. I'm currently in the level 2 program, and I've been trading in crypto since about May 2017. So I was lucky to get in on a fairly friendly year for a newbie like me. And since then, I've obviously learned a lot of the lessons easy and hard way. But I was fortunate enough to be able to take half time in work. So I'm a teacher by trade, and I teach phys ed to the little guys. And just kind of working my way into the crypto trading life over the last year or two, and decided I saw you were presenting this, and I wanted to kind of support, so help you put together the presentation and just share sort of how I've been using this dev report as you've presented it to us.
All right. Colin, this is your take, I think.
Yeah, so I picked this out as the sort of kickoff for today, so that we could take a look at sort of the comparison between prices and developmental activity, because I think it's very easy as an investor or trader in the space to get caught up staring at prices, right? We just see green bars, red bars, percent gains, percent losses. And if you ask your friends who aren't involved, they'll just say, oh yeah, scam, that's such a Ponzi, it's going down. But if you look here, the monthly active developers on a lot of these projects really hasn't fallen off all that much. And so, this is something I would just sort of keep in the back of my mind if you are in a situation where the emotions are sneaking into your analysis. You say, you know what, prices may be going up and down in market cycle, but if you look here, you'll see that the development in the space has not slowed down nearly as much as the price. Because I think by now we all know what the sort of market cap chart would look like and the Bitcoin chart, but if you see right here on the screen, obviously the development in the space has not followed that. So I like this one just to kind of kick off sort of our share today for that.
This really shows the strength of the concept of cryptocurrencies and the projects that are related to it. I think this is, if it would be a pyramid scheme like some renowned economic professors say, then you would say that the developers would have been gone, right? So this isn't like a Ponzi scheme, or it's a Fugazi. It's there and it's real, and people are willing to work on it. And a lot of developers don't even get paid for it. They just work on it from a passion, and I think that's a really strong signal. But okay, let's continue.
Mm-hmm.
So what data is being represented here? We're talking about, well, two things really: number of commits, and you have to think about it can be a commit is nothing more than a change or changes to one or more files. It doesn't say anything about the quality, and I will get back to that in a moment. And they are talking about contributors, so that's the number of developers. It doesn't need to be developers only. It could be, for example, some people who are working on documentation or even translations of documentation. It's also part of a project usually. And also with these contributors, you have contributors who do a lot of stuff in a short amount of time, and then you don't hear anything about them anymore. Or you have someone who regularly contributes to the project, but doesn't contribute as much. But so it's kind of difficult to say who is who really adds quality and who doesn't. Data is retrieved from GitHub. So GitHub is, you can see GitHub. I think most of the people have heard of GitHub. But GitHub is kind of a cloud solution for a protocol that is called Git. And Git is nothing more than a way to determine changes in files. That's basically it. I can talk about GitHub because it's, there's a lot of cool, it has a cool story how it came into being, but let's not do that today. That's a topic, talk for another day. Let's move on. So what are the limitations of this data? Well, data is quantifiable, not qualitative, and it means that you can kind of say something about it, but not a whole lot about it, because you don't know the quality of the commits. You don't know the quality of the contributors. You have to keep in mind when you look at this data that just the sheer amount of commits doesn't say a whole lot about the project. Just the amount of contributors doesn't say a whole lot about the project. I mean, you can have like a lot of commits like in the first 3 months of a project, and then later on there's no commits at all. And we will see, I mean, you could make the bearish case for Litecoin, but maybe we'll get into that later on. So when you talk about code and commits, I prepared a little example here, and this is not C++, so Bitcoin is written in C++. So this is the slide where I will probably lose 80% of the of the viewers. But anyway, you don't have to understand what he's saying, but you say this is 8 lines of code to determine the next Fibonacci number. So if I will put in, I don't know, number 8 or something, it should return 13. Anyway, so this is C++, so this 8 lines of code. So if I would put this in a commit, so I can commit this whole package of code, and there would be one commit with 8 lines of code, 8 lines of difference onto the project. So, but if I use a different programming language like Haskell, I can write it down in 3 lines of code, really, and it's really about the 3rd line of code. So Haskell is really equipped to do these kinds of functions. And you know, these are both what we call so-called linear algorithms. So you don't have to, again, if you're a programmer or you did some programming on university or whatever, I'm not quite sure if you're like aware of concepts like time complexity. But you could have like Haskell, and you can do it in a little bit faster way, even like in 1 line of code. And it will even be faster to execute. So usually you can kind of know how quick algorithms are. You can count it, and we have different ways to view at it. So you have like exponential algorithms, linear algorithms, and logarithmic algorithms, and also constant time. But I'm not going into not going to delve into it. But the main takeaway is that there's a huge difference in how you produce code, and the quality of it, and also the quality you can really talk about. Like you can, I will talk about it a little bit. Let's go to the next slide. So number of lines says nothing, basically. Good code, it reads like a book. So if you're writing code, it should be easy to understand for someone else as well, so they can contribute as well. You know, I mean, if someone is reading your code, that person has to understand what you have been writing or what it is about. So you can do it with documentation, like inline documentation, or you can basically write really good code which reads by itself. So just like a book, code can be too long, and when code is too long and too complicated, we like to call it in Holland, at least. I'm not quite sure if it's a concept in the English language at all, but we call it spaghetti code, because you can't really discern the different blocks of codes and what it's really about. It's just one big mess. And a code can also be really short, like that last line of Haskell, which I showed. I mean, you have to be really you really have to be smart to know what's going on there, what it is about. I mean, if you would put that line code to someone who's just new to coding, he wouldn't think that it's about Fibonacci, I guess. Other than that, it is called the variable was called Fib. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, just before we get into the core versus total, I thought it'd be worth pointing out, because it occurred to me as we're presenting this that not everyone may have seen the report that we're discussing. So for anyone who wants to take a look, I've just posted the link here in the Google Hangout. Perhaps somebody could fire it over to the YouTube as well. That way, somebody who is interested could view that after.
All right. So core code versus total code, what's the difference? Well, the core code, I mean, what they're calling core code is just the code for the protocol. So it's only the commits and the developers who are working on the protocol itself. And then you have the total code, and it's all the code surrounding the protocol. So you have to think about libraries and about wallets as well. So you can think about if you have like a lot of developers and a lot of commits working, or like a lot of commits and a lot of developers working on core, but not so much on anything on the total code. Then you basically say, okay, this is purely a protocol level project. For example, cryptocurrencies like money type of projects. For example, Monero or Bitcoin or Dash, I guess, or Litecoin. And then you have like projects with a large total code base and a smaller core code base. And these are projects usually these are like platforms like Ethereum or Komodo, I think, Cardano. And they do a lot more than just the cryptocurrency. So it makes sense. I mean, these platforms are built so that other people can build their own projects on it, right? So it makes sense that they have way more total code versus core code. Right. So core code says something about the health of the protocol, I would say, and total code says something about the protocol's ecosystem. Let's move on. And basically the question is, do you want to invest in the protocol or in its ecosystem? So if you're looking to, I think it's really interesting to be part of platforms. So I like to invest in those kinds of projects. But if you're only thinking like, okay, only the protocol will survive or whatever, or you just want to be part of the protocol with the biggest network effect, for example, Bitcoin, then you make different investment choices, right? All right. Colin?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, really getting into sort of the meat of what we could take away from a report like this, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at some of the charts that I found interesting. First of all, here, we've got some sort of alignment between total and core code of some of the more popular projects. And as you can see here on the y-axis along the bottom, x-axis along the bottom, you have the total market cap or network value. So the further to the right, the higher the market cap, like EOS, you'll see on the far right. Whereas the higher up they are, you have Cardano way up top, and they have, which is a number of developers. But as San said, more code is not always better, and you could have 100 developers pumping out code that aren't very skilled, whereas 5 highly skilled developers, could be putting together some really quality code sets. So again, with everything like this is just one tool that you might use when looking into a project and kind of making longer term decisions about it. I think San and I talked a lot about, exactly, so quality is greater than quantity, Josh. And, this to me, as a trader and investor would be, or speculator, if you will, would be just one tool that I might use when looking into a project. So if you notice on our next slide, I've sort of highlighted a couple of potential red flags where you have NEM way down in that little box, who's got a fairly high network value, but hardly any development going on. And I believe they actually just came out with news in the last few months that talked about them having like 6 months of capital runway left. whether they were overspending or whether they were just speculating on their own Ethereum stores. The fact is they are not looking good. So if I had a big old bag of NEM that I bought and I thought, oh, I'm going to hold on to this for 5 years, I might look at this and reconsider. So that's sort of how I used this. And again, just, you know, highlighting that that is just a potential red flag, because something that interesting came up in our conversation while we prepared for this was that sometimes you have less development because the platform is finished and it's running smoothly and you only need a couple of devs on hand to sort of patch it and keep it updated. So this in and of itself, you know, like any TA, we want 3 unrelated reasons. Where FA is concerned, you also don't want to make big decisions based on one report. So there we have sort of a few potential red flags with Ethereum Classic. Neo is actually in that box as well. And if we flip to the next page, we'll see actually some potential green flags. So I hadn't heard much about Status since their ICO. I believe it ICO'd in 2017. Don't quote me on that, but it was, they raised quite a bit, if I can remember correctly, something like, I don't know, it was over $100 million if I'm recalling correctly. So I mean, that's a ton of money to raise. So it's not surprising to see that they have, you know, a large number of developers pumping out total code. But as we said, that's not necessarily the core code, total code. That could be a lot of developers building on top as well. And then you have Eternity, which I believe just pumped up today, yesterday. Interesting. Oh, we get an alarm. So, you know, a couple little things to keep an eye on here. If you see a project that you're really bullish and excited on, you may want to try to find it on this chart and just kind of get a look at that back end. You know, what work is really being done. And, you know, you have Bitcoin SV, which is way up to the right in network value, but way at the bottom for development. So I would be asking questions and maybe looking into that one a little more to see what, you know, what are they really doing behind all this price action.
Right. Right. So yeah, you can see something about. We can talk a little bit about developer trends. It's not something I would really use as FA, because I mean, if you have a lot of money, you can hire developers, and of course, if you run out of money, developers will go down. You can also have, like, developers can also go down, like Colin already said, in a process called solidification. And it's basically when a protocol becomes either it becomes like there's too much vested interest in the protocol to keep it as it is. And I think we can see that process, for example, in Bitcoin, where you just don't make like really huge changes anymore. Although I think they are doing some nice change which should have been done way long ago, and that's like they're preparing to separate the node, like the data, from the user interface, the wallet. So I foresee a future where in Bitcoin you can have a separate node. Your node can be separate from the wallet, so to speak. So they are making progress on that, but there's not going to be a huge difference. I mean, if you look at something like Cardano, which is like full on in mode to do changes, and they're researching all kinds of stuff with all kinds of universities and academic people. It's like a lot of theory which still needs to be put into practice. So I expect to be they will have like a large developer base for a long time. The same for Ethereum, I think, and it's just something to consider, that even though like developers go down over time, it doesn't really says a whole lot about the strength of a protocol. It could be a good thing. It kind of depends. Yeah, you can't just take this as a statistic and say, okay, the number of developers go down, so I probably should get rid of this investment, or if developers pick up, I should probably buy more of it, or something like that. It's not that black and white, right? All right.
Of course, and really, I mean, if we're looking at, you know, I want to get the one that's going to be $1 trillion market cap someday, the next Google. Well, you know, there's a certain point where the development phase will stop or slow down greatly, and it'll turn into sort of marketing and other kinds of things. So definitely good to take all of this with sort of a grain of salt and add it into a toolkit rather than, take it as gospel, so to speak.
Right.
Which brings us to our sort of next slide. This is one that I put together based on sort of my approach in the market prior to joining TRI, which obviously I had some TA skills, but as I'm finding out very quickly, none that were fully developed or even necessarily correct. But what I did in the markets for about the year and a half prior to TRI was really look at comparisons in existing projects, the macro narratives. I actually have that at the bottom of this list here, but I figure I'll kick off with that because that is sort of what I used to do when I was trying to find out, like, what do you buy? You're looking at like the gain and loser list on CMC and whatever. But I find in this, because it's such a speculative market, a lot of sort of what drives price action is the stories or the narratives. And, one of the bigger examples from 2017 would be the ETH run up and then the NEO sort of chase, right? There's like Chinese Ethereum. And then, of course, it started going on this epic run from, I think it was like $7 to $220 or something. And so that was really, just storytelling. And it was social media and it was speculative. So, and then same for EOS, right? And you get these big sort of echo pumps, as I like to call them. And it's kind of silly, but one that I'll share from just the other day is sort of for a practical example. GRS, you may have noticed, has been having its a little fun in the market in the last few weeks. And I noticed a year ago or a year and a half ago when GRS kind of came out on the scene that VTC, Vertcoin, used to just pump right along with it. And for whatever reason, whether it was community-based or the functionality-based, I don't even know. But the other day, I was talking to a friend. I said, you know what, GRS is kind of going nuts. Maybe we should take a look at VTC. So I put in a little trade. I hunted some setup. I found 3 reasons, and I got in. And sure enough, it was 3 days later, it was a 42% pump right into the short reload zone. And so this is sort of like an older way of how I analyze, but it's still obviously, it works really well in sort of bullish markets, which, macro, maybe we're not in that yet, but we are definitely in a bullish little alt. Mini alt season, if you will. So I included a few things here. Some of the tools I do use for crypto fundamentals. Of course, development reports like today, GitHub activity is a one that we're talking about today. Other things you can look at, blocktivity.info. I included the link. There's a number of transactions on a network. So if you really want to see what's going on in the network, on the network, you can check out the statistics there. So obviously higher network usage, you would think would be a good predictor of potential network value. Downloads in an app store for some of the ones that have more developed products. Community size was one I used to look at. If you were looking at ICOs, if there's 100,000 people there dying to get in, you can imagine that after launch it may see a little bit of volume. Number of social media mentions. Solium.io is an interesting tool. There's a number of these. I think there's actually a different one in the TRI library, but I still use Solium.io/crypto. Crypto Loom, perhaps. I think Reza said in the lounge here. So Solium.io, actually, if we could go there right now, I don't know, Sam, if you could click on that. I noticed today that it's actually getting some reaction. This one only works in sort of bull markets or bullish sort of sequences. But if you look on that list, if you could sort it by social volume change, 24 hours there. I noticed today there's a few coins that are actually having some fairly positive price action. And what I noticed in Solium.io in 2017, so if you go just 2 to the right there, social volume change, 24 hour, sort that. And you'll see that Eternity.
BitConnect.
BitConnect seems to always be on this list. I don't know why. In the last year, I've noticed it's always lingering. But you'll see Eternity there, 379% increase in social volume. And it's actually just kind of finished like a little 20% pump. So it's like small example. But in 2017, when we found this, it was uncanny. We didn't trade it very often because it seemed like we hadn't really tested it and it was weird. But every time the sentiment change or social volume change spiked, you had almost 48 hours to get in. And then 48 hours later, they would go on these face rip rallies, right? So it's like you can kind of spot the buzz in those macro narratives prior to price action reflecting it. So this is an old favorite of mine. It does not work in the bear market at all. But if we head back into sort of a scramble to find the unpumped coins, so to speak, which is sort of what alt season turns into if it is an alt season, That's a great tool. Network value, you can use CoinCheckup or CMC. I find CoinCheckup is kind of like a CoinMarketCap on steroids. They give you a little bit more FA background and news, and sort of they have their own little ranking system. Who knows what metrics go into that, but it's worth a look. And then things like mainstream penetration by market partnerships. Obviously, this spring we're seeing a lot of action in the Samsung rumor mill. So if you are a crypto company and you're saying we're going to disrupt this industry, and then a big player in that industry says, hey, we're going to shake your hand and bring you in, obviously that's going to reflect well over time, and potentially in the price action. And so looking at things like that on website blogs for teams helps a little bit. Mining statistics, I'm not too familiar with the mining side of this, but if you're looking at POW coins, you can look at whattomine.com and get a real look at the statistics and different metrics, for profitability, number of miners, mining pools, division of, sort of how spread out, how decentralized it is, stuff like that, if it's interesting to you. And then things like industry category. So if you have, what are you buying? Are you buying a currency that's just trying to sort of mirror Bitcoin? Is it IoT distribution? Is it real estate, complex markets? I mean, you can kind of factor in, because again, this is all speculation on what things might be worth someday, maybe. If you're disrupting a massive industry, it's got a higher potential than, if you are disrupting, for example, a smaller one. I listed sort of the bigger ones here, like ticketing and insurance, but I guess, ticketing is fairly small compared to maybe complex markets, something like a quadrillion sort of volume in the world, or in the year. So, and then, again, at the end of this list, I just talked a little bit about sort of the concept of hunting, sort of the psychological, speculative macro narratives. That's sort of an old hobby of mine. I'm trying to move into something a little more sustainable and quantifiable as I work through the TRI program. So, and that's it. I mean, as far as what I'd like to share today, I thought I'd try to factor in how I might build out my own FA toolkit. And just like with TA, you want to have multiple reasons if you're going to look for a longer term position. So these are just a few of the things I look at.
Okay. Oh, we talked about it, I guess. This.
Yeah, that might be a dead slide at the end there. We forgot to.
Yeah, I got one more slide. So I just put in a resources slide at the last moment. There are so you can find the report what we're talking about, where the graphs come from. There's also this website which shows the commits of. You can kind of see the number of commits. Not quite sure how reliable this data is. I guess, yeah. I'm not sure what they're what they're counting. So that it looks like they're counting the total commits, and but that wouldn't make sense. Like when you look at the past 3 months, you would expect that it just would be less, I suppose. I'm not quite sure. So I didn't verify the data yet. So, but it's I guess you can see pretty quickly which coin should be on your radar. Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me that 0x is on this or ELF is on this, Zilliqa as well. So there are quite a few, and I also put in some of the GitHub pages, like the top 10 coins, I would say, which are looking interesting for me from an FA perspective. I would say Litecoin is not one of them. I'm not quite sure why I included it here, but and I just put in Bitcoin, Ethereum for good measure as well. I think if you look at the Bitcoin GitHub page and the Ethereum GitHub page and just look at the differences, you can see you can see it's really interesting, because you can see the difference in mentality. You can see it. It just shines through the GitHub pages as well. Okay, and that's it for today. I suppose we're a little bit over time. Sorry about that. But yeah, that's our presentation. Thank you, Colin.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today, and hopefully something I said can provide somebody with some value here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great stuff, guys. Thank you very much. And that slide deck, I think we posted it on the YouTube page. But Alex B., can we maybe put a link to that slide deck in the write-up today? Yeah, okay, cool. So if you need that link, maybe just reach out to the boys. So yeah, thank you very much. We should probably, for future level 1 classes, Grim, probably not a bad idea to have them all watch this, as when we go through the fundamental analysis module on eating your vegetables, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, really great example of sort of 1 + 1 = 3. Let's all work together to try and to have a better understanding of this space. Excellent contribution to the community, guys. Thank you very much. Totally appreciate that. And it looks like you're getting lots of shout outs. If anything, Sen, maybe it's just an idea, but maybe throw like a QR code for a Bitcoin donation address or something on that slideshow. And if people want to throw you a couple bucks for your efforts, I'm sure our community would I think there's like little tip bot things that you can do on Twitter and stuff like that. So it might be kind of a fun way where you could create like a little dev pool of capital from your hard work that you put in on these presentations to play with in the marketplace and maybe demonstrate. Something to think about, okay?
Yeah, thank you. But I mean, I like to contribute to the community. So, and this is one of the ways I can do it. So
awesome. Well, it might be
like Colin. He created the slide deck. It's Colin and I did it really together. So it would be unfair to claim anyone's Bitcoin for just for myself.
Well, I didn't say you can use the funds to whatever noble cause that you deem. I just think that would be a good way for people in the community to show you how they appreciate your hard effort that you put in. So, well, I can see Collins here like, I'll take the donations. I'll take them.
I still got to pay for my level 3. Okay, no. I will say though, there's a number in my work typically in community and as a teacher, there are a number of opportunities that I have to support families that are in need. So I mean, yeah, if you guys want to set up a little tip bot type thing, I will absolutely not keep that for myself. You just have to trust me on that. There are a few families in my life that I kind of look after when I can, and I'd be happy to take something on their behalf and put it to good use. So
all right, I'm just suggesting.
I don't have that set up.
Not a terrible idea to throw a QR code on that slide deck, and if people want to, tip you whatever for your hard work, I think that's perfectly fine. Okay. And as well too, Sen. Actually, I had some people that are in the level 2 class asking whether Sen's scholarship was open for the level 2 program. And I was like, I'm not quite sure about that.
No, it's for the level 1s. It's no.
So anyway, but that's here nor there.
I mean, when you're level 2, you should be able to get your money back, right, from trading. So
yeah, I just funny joke. So
yeah.
All right. So Mr. Mayor, what do you think? Did we give these people some good value today?
Sure. Awesome stuff.
All right, excellent. So why don't we leave it at that? I have to head off to teach class here in about 45 minutes. So I think we'll probably wind up the show for today. Thank you very much, Sen and Colin, for excellent, very professional presentation. Love it. And as I said, we'll probably make future reference to this presentation for new students going forward, because I think it's a really good sort of base for them to understand fundamentals in this space. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for driving the bus and keeping us on schedule and being an awesome anchor for us here on a daily basis. I see we have quite a few people watching on the YouTube page, so I hope you all enjoyed that. If you have any questions for the boys, I'm sure we could probably, I think, do we have like an FA room, a crypto FA room on the side? I'm not quite sure. But, maybe that's something we can also look into. But feel free to reach out to me. If you have a question, I'll pass it on to the boys or PM them.
You can message directly as well, right? So
yeah, well, I didn't want to say that because in case you guys get flooded with messages. But Sen's given the green thumbs up. Yeah. If you have a question, feel free to reach out. And I would assume Colin, being such a great guy, he's probably agreeable to getting him at PM here and there too, eh?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to help out and share and teach what I can.
Awesome. All right, guys. Sounds like we have an awesome class. Well, actually, that was a bit of a class, wasn't it? For everybody to work off of today. We'll see everybody in the Broiler Chicken Show on Sunday. And of course, Thomas will be back in the saddle beginning of next week to review his perspective on the market. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Have yourselves a great rest of your afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And actually, Riza, I think they're actually getting really close to getting their offering put together. So Riza, you'll be up next on the presentation docket. So have yourselves a great day, everybody. All the best. And the only thing left for good old Uncle Brian to say at this point is a big bye for now.